Hey all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about pacing a campaign. I've already talked about campaign structure in terms of having a beginning, a middle, and an end to your campaign. I've already talked about pacing a session to make sure that the energy keeps rolling, that you keep moving through there, and everybody's having fun at all times. Not that you always need to push that, but when to let the players do that, and if they stop, then that's when the GM needs to step in at that point. But I thought I'd talk about pacing the campaign, kind of combining these two elements. So again, you got your 3-act structure. You got your beginning, or your exposition, where they learn about the world. At some point there's an inciting incident, which leads into the decision-making process, the middle of your story. You make your allies, you make your enemies, you prepare to fight your enemies, and you prepare to help your allies. That's the middle. The end is when everything triggers. So your preparations are tested, your friendships are tested, your enemies will be tested with perhaps a forearm shiver, perhaps with the lariat. Whatever it is, you've got to make sure that they fail that test. But because of this 3-act structure, you need to pace things a certain way. For that beginning part, that's when you're throwing out plot hooks left and right. Here's a plot hook, here's another one, here's another one. Sneak one in the back door. You want all the characters you can get into the story as fast as possible. You want all the plots into this sandbox as fast as possible. How fast is possible? Probably only like 3 things a session. Because you don't want information overload, you don't want to burn them out. So you want to throw as much at them as they can handle, but they can probably only handle like 3 or 6 new elements per session. They just don't have the attention span. Nobody does. You know, I get burned out too, even if I take notes. If I got to, mark down 20 things every session, I'm going to stop taking notes real soon, and I'm not going to be able to comprehend what's going on. So in that beginning part, make sure though that you hit these 3 things every session. And then once you get to the inciting incident, and once you get to the middle of the story, that's when you've got to start laying off a little bit. Stop throwing plot hooks at them, because if you introduce them this late, they might never get to follow up and finish them. You might need to stop introducing new NPCs at this point. Because, again, those NPCs will just be crowding the setting, muddying the waters, and you don't want to do that. You need to get to an end. And if you keep beginning, you're never going to end, It's going to get too big. I'm sure we've all played role-playing games, video games, like Skyrim, a sandbox game, and you've got so many plot hooks, you'll never finish them. You'll hit maximum level, level 99 or whatever it is, and you'll still have all these plot hooks unresolved. And you say, well, why should I follow through? I'm already at 99, It doesn't matter. Because the game can't pace you, because it's a computer. But in a real role-playing game, you have the GM to pace you. He can make sure that you complete everything that you've started. There are no loose threads, in theory. In practice, there will still be loose threads, but you can try to mitigate this. So right now in God of Dameron, we've hit that middle point, and we're like halfway through the middle point too. So I've stopped introducing new plot hooks. I've stopped introducing new NPCs. The players are having to elaborate on what's already on their plate. You got to eat what's on your plate now, son. Eat your vegetables. Get through the main storyline. Get to know this guy. You already know his name, what he looks like. He sent you on a quest. You came back. You learned a little more. But now we're going to learn even more about this NPC, because there's nobody else new coming in to distract you. The distraction phase is over. Now we focus. So beginning, you're distracted, everything's bright and new and shiny. Middle, focus in, figure out what's really going on. Now that you know what the world is like, the power players, now you can position yourself for the end game. when we see how everything combusts and how it falls onto the table. So as a GM, pace your players. At a certain point, stop introducing new stuff so that they can actually have an end to the campaign as a whole. Because if the campaign just keeps going and going and going and going and going and there's no end, you're going to lose out on a lot of things. Catharsis, closure, the chance to start again and have a new campaign with different genre and different characters. Those are all wonderful things, but they need an ending. So always have that ending in mind from day one as a GM. Plan accordingly, pace your game accordingly. It's very important. A lot of new GMs, they don't know this, and their first campaign it fizzles out. There's no ending. There's no catharsis, and the catharsis is what will bring people back to the table. It's the most fun part of the game in many ways. Those are the two most fun parts. Are probably the very beginning, because you get the best role playing out of introducing your character, unless you made them as a group, in which case you jacked yourself of that, and the ending, which is where you get to see where they go from here. And a lot of people jack themselves of that because they have no ending or an epilogue. When we end a campaign, we go around the table and we say, what happened to your character next? What was the end of his life like? We fought the battles, we won the war, we rescued the princess, whatever it is. Now, what's his happy ending? And we go around and everybody says, oh, my character, Mike assassinated the pharaoh and became the new pharaoh. Josh wandered off into the desert to mourn his lost relatives who died. Rick followed him into the desert to torment him eternally and just pester him. I believe Aaron's character retired and married a fat, rich woman, and he drank himself and whored himself to death, Robert Baratheon style. And these were great endings for those characters, because we were with those characters for, I think it was 400 hours beforehand. Their epilogues meant so much more. We wanted to see them be happy or be miserable or whatever it was. We cared by then because it was 400 hours in. So don't jack yourself with that opportunity. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. Just pace your campaign. Keep the big picture in mind at all times. So I'm going to sign out now. Everybody have a good day in YouTube land. Cheers.